Want to make a jellyfish? Let's make a jellyfish. I saw these at my markets. They actually go really well. They hang along the front of my gazebo. They bring in lots of people, so they do catch a lot of attention. They are relatively big. It will depend on the size hook you use and the size yarn you use. But mine, you can see if I hold in my hands, this is roughly the size. A little bit bigger than normal because it was a quite chunky yarn. A very, very simple pattern. And I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of jellyfish patterns out there. I haven't actually used any of them. I saw a jellyfish, I made a jellyfish, and that was about a year and a half ago. And since then I've made a few different types, but this is the one that I find works the best for my markets. It's easy to make. It is adaptable so that you can add or subtract bits from it as you choose. It is a good all-round jellyfish pattern. You may find that it resembles in some ways other patterns that you've seen. After all, there are only so many ways that you can make a dome and a ruffle and some tentacles. But this is just something that I've put together over the last 18 months, little bits and pieces of what I like and what customers at the markets are telling me that they like. So if you'd like to have a go of this, very, very simple. I'm not actually going to teach you how to crochet. I'm going to assume that you know how to do increases, decreases, single crochet, slip stitches, chains, and that you can sew just the tiniest little bit. I will go through a completely no-sew option for you as well. The only potential sewing is underneath here where these 3 coloured tentacles are. And this is made in one piece, and you can put maybe 6 stitches around there, 3 if you're super lazy like me. You can do that with a needle and thread, or you can do that with your crochet hook. So however works best for you. I am definitely not a stickler for rules. And so if you want to take this plan and make it work for you, I have absolutely no issues with that. So let's get started. You're going to need your yarn of choice. I'm not going to say that you need something specific. You could do this with cotton. You could do it with normal 8-ply acrylic. You could do it with chenille, blanket velour, anything that tickles your fancy. This one is made out of a very, very thick, I want to say chenille, but I don't know that it's a chenille. But it is a very, very thick yarn, like a blanket, but it has a much stronger core to it. I have used velvet, I have used blanket, I have used chenille. I also use cotton for a different type of jellyfish, so they all work out. There are a few little things that you might like to tweak along the way, and I'll point those out as we go. I use a variegated colour for the bell. I use the variegated here. I use a contrasting colour or a matching colour around the ruffle. I use whatever colour for the ruffle. I also use for the centre arms. And then I use for these other thinner tentacles, I have 3 made in this colour, and I have 3 made in a contrasting colour. So for example, this one is a variegated blue and white, blue ruffle, same blue for the centre arms, the variegated blue for 3 of these, and then I've used a white sparkle chenille for 3 of these. If I show you my orange one, you can see that it has a similar format. So for this one, this is a variegated orange, yellow, white. I've used that for the bell, and then I've used that for the thinner tentacles. The ruffle is a white sparkly chenille, and I've used that again for the centre arm. And then as a contrast to pick up on the yellow in the body, I've used a variegated, very, very, very thin velour yellow and white for that one. So you can choose any colours you like. You could do the whole thing in one colour. You could do every single component in multicolours, completely up to you. For this jellyfish today, I'm going to go with this beautiful yarn, and I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if it's a blanket or a chenille, but it is lovely and soft. So that's going to be my bell and 3 of the tentacles off the bottom. For the ruffle and for the centre arms, I'm going to use this white velour. It is about the same thickness as the other, but I do like to vary the textures as well as the colours. So this one will make the ruffle and the 3 thicker centre arms. And for the contrasting arms below, or the tentacles, whatever we call them, I'm going to use this mint green. And this is like a velour, but I would say it's maybe a chenille. I don't know, I just use yarns. So that's my three: the bell, the ruffles, and the tentacles. So we're going with a marine sort of theme for this one. Now, I don't put eyes in these ones. Completely up to you if you would like to add some eyes, and I'll point out where you can add those in later on if you want to, or you can embroider them on afterwards if you choose. I'm going to be using a 6mm for the bell and the ruffle, and I'm using a 5mm for the tentacles underneath. So the only other thing is obviously your scissors to snip the threads, your needle in case you don't mind sewing, and that's it. It's a really nice simple make. I'm going to put the instructions on the screen as we go, and then I'm going to make a PDF available on my Ko-fi. We're going to get started with a magic ring, or you can start with 2 chain and work back into the first one with 8 single crochet. Okay, we pull that tight. Round 2, we are going to increase in each stitch. And 16. So that is 2 rounds, and we have a total of 16 stitches. So now that we have 16 stitches on there, our next round is 1 single crochet and an increase. I'm not using a stitch marker. I have the tail end of the yarn, which I just flip over there, and that tells me that that's the beginning of each round. End of round 3, and we have done a single and an increase all the way around, so we've made an increase of 8. So now we should have 24 stitches on there. Next round is 2 single crochet, 1 increase all the way around for another increase of 8, and that will take us up to 32. That was the 2 single crochet and an increase. Next round is 3 and an increase, and if you'd like to skip ahead, then we are doing also 4 and an increase. Okay, so that was 3 singles and an increase, and now we're going on to the last increase round before we start our single crochet rounds, and this one is 4 singles and an increase. So that is up to 4 single crochet and 1 increase. That is going to be the diameter of the jellyfish, and what we're going to do now is 7 rows of single crochet. Now you can adjust that if you choose. If you feel like 7 is too much for you, then drop it down, and you will end up with a more squat jellyfish. I'm going to do 7 rows, and I'm going to come back when that is finished. So that is 7 rounds of single crochet done, and you can see that the shape there has straightened out a little bit where we've put those rows in. It's not going to be a squared off at the end when we finish, because the next rounds are going to be decrease that will pull it into a more circular shape. The next round is going to be 4 single crochet and a decrease all the way around, and I will come back to you after we finish that. And there we go. So that round has started to pull it in a little bit more. So you can see on there that it's starting to curve inwards. Now, for the next round, I have grabbed some stitch markers. Not that I normally use them, but the next round we're going to be working in the back loop only. And because this yarn is quite fluffy, I don't want the back loops to get lost. So I'm just going to put a stitch marker every now and then just to help me keep on track. You can see the stitches, but I don't want to lose them, so I'm going to place those in. So what we're going to do on this round is we are going in the back loop only, and we're going to do 3 single crochet and then a decrease. So I'm sure that you know how to do that. If you pop it into the back, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then decrease. I do my decreases a bit like a slip stitch, so I pick up the 2 loops and then bring the yarn back through all of them. I'm going to put a stitch marker back here at the beginning where that round started, so in my first front loop, because I'm going to need that later on. I'm going to put, say, 4 of these around the outside of there as we go, just to keep track of those front loops. So I will come back again when we've done the full round of 3 single crochet and a decrease. So that is that round done. That was 3 single crochet and a decrease, and I have put a pin in all of those, not all of those, I've put a pin in some of those front loops, and that's where I'm going to put the ruffle. Now I'm going to put the ruffle on now because I don't like to work with something that's already been stuffed. And so I'm going to do that now because if it's not stuffed, I can fold that over and those front loops are sticking out the top and they're going to be much easier to get my hook into because I do crochet quite tightly. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger and put a stitch marker in just in case, so that won't pull out any of my stitches that I've already done. I was going to change size of my hook, but I don't think I will, so I'm going to stick with my 6mm and I'm going to pick up the yarn that I want to do the ruffle in. Now, if you would prefer to do the ruffle after you've finished the bell and stuffed and closed it, then skip ahead to the instructions to finish off the bell. As I said, I'm doing this now because it's going to be much easier with this type of yarn for me to see where the front loops are. So let's grab some of that. There we go. That's a nice smooth velvet, so that's going to work up really, really easily. So I'm going back to here where the round started. When you do that front loop round, it doesn't quite align, so it starts here, but it ends up here. So I sometimes do an extra single crochet so that the last front loop is directly above the one before it, rather than them sort of going sequentially. Sometimes, depending on the yarn too, I often go sort of diagonally between the 2 rows just to fill that gap. Your other option is to put a few more stitches into the ruffle on either end there just to bring them together at the end. So now with this ruffle, I don't do it too frilly. So this one had the same stitches in each front loop. So this one has 2 half doubles all the way around. And that doesn't give you a really curly ruffle, but it does give you that little sort of skirt that sticks out a bit. This one, I did 2 half doubles and then 2 doubles, and that gave it that little bit of a scallop. So that's another option. What you could also do is to put 3 in each, and that will give you a really, really curly little ruffle on it. Or you could go 3, 2, 3, 2. Try out a few different ones, and it also depends on the length that you want, whether you do a half double or a full double. What I'm going to do on this one though is on this I am going to do the 2 half doubles and then 2 double crochet, and that's going to give the scalloped edge like that with just a little tiny bit of a wave in it, not too frilly. So let's just have a quick look at that, and then you're quite welcome to zoom ahead if you like. Alrighty, so fold that down so that you can see the stitches. There's the first front loop right there with the stitch marker in it. Please ignore the awkward way that I do everything because, like I said, I do crochet very tightly. Okay, the yarn in, I like to double them over and crochet that end down so that it's nice and solid. So now I'm going to put 2 half doubles into the first front loop. 1, where is it? 1 and 2. And then what I'm doing is I'm pinching that over so that the front loops are sticking out on top. And I'll go around later and pull the stitch markers out. So there's the next one. And whoops-a-daisy, yarn over and double and double, and then I'm going to do a half and a half, then a double and a double, and then let's have a look at that. So that is going to give you a bit of a ruffle around the edge, just a gentle one. I'm going to finish this one and I'll see you back at the end. So I've been all the way around and I'm back at the beginning again here, and where I did that extra single crochet when I finished that decrease round, you can see that kind of overlaps a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is just do a slip stitch back into the beginning of that first ruffle, and then I might use the end because you can see there's a little hole there, but there is between all of them. So I'll see how that goes, but I might just leave a little bit extra tail when I cut that, just to put a stitch through there, and then I'll go down through the body and put the tail inside. So let's get that one chopped. Okay. Just have a little look at that and grab my needle. If you've got a real thing for needles, and that's fine, you can do this with a smaller hook. I often grab my 3 and use that to finish things off. So I'm just going to go from the back there down about halfway along each row. Along each stitch. So the end stitch and the first stitch, and I'm just going to put a little join there just to hold them together a bit more. And what I might do, because I do love a good knot, and you know that this velvet yarn is not going to come out of a knot. So just tied that to the beginning tail, and I'm just going to weave that through until it pops out inside the bell. And we can leave that there, and then again you can do this with a smaller hook or your normal hook depending on your tension. But I'm just going to put that through there as well, bring it out into the bell. Alrighty, so there is our ruffle. So I did the pair of doubles and the pair of half doubles all the way around. It's given it a little bit of a wave as well as having that scalloped edge on it. So I'm pretty happy with that. So the next thing that we do is, I'm actually going to cut those a little bit shorter because they're going to annoy me so much. All right, the next thing we're doing now is we are going back to this one, and we are going to continue that decrease with a 2 singles and a decrease all the way around, then 1 single and a decrease all the way around. And then some of you might like to stop there. I often stop before I do the full decrease round, and I just weave those together and pull them in. It depends on your tension and depends on your preferences. So first of all, I'm going to do the 2 and a decrease, and then I will come back again and we'll check in with how it's going. All right, that was the round of 2 single crochet and a decrease. The next round is 1 single and a decrease, and then we'll stop and check how it's going before we continue. Hit pause now. That was the round of 1 single, 1 decrease, and I think that I probably am going to do the next round of just straight decrease all the way around, and I will have to stuff that. I am a very big fan of last minute stuffing, and I think I can't get much further with this one without putting the stuffing in. So let me just grab that stuffing and we'll get that done. I will pull that thread out and just whack a stitch marker in there for now, just so that I don't lose that. Little bits of stuffing, separate it all first so it doesn't go in lumpy. And I like to pack it in around the outside edges. So I'm going around the outside and put my fingers in and just push everything around to the outside first. And that's going to help keep that rounded shape of the bell that we want. I'm getting tangled up in everything there now. So I'm just going to stuff a little bit more into the center, and then make sure I've got enough under that lip of the base rows, and then pop that under there. Okay, so I'm going to just give that a little squish. All right, that works for me. So you can see that the shape that's become now, that's actually quite nice and round. There are no obvious lumps sticking out because we separated everything before we put it in. All right, now the last round, which is going to be just decrease all the way around. I will put that little stitch marker just there so that I don't have to keep turning the bell over to find my end. All right, decrease all the way around, and I'll come back when that's finished. That's the last round of decrease, tiny little hole in the middle. I'm glad I did the stuffing before that round because that would have been a bit of a nightmare trying to get it in there. Okay, don't need a very big tail, so I'm just going to cut off a couple of inches and let's take that stitch marker out before I forget. All right, we're just going to close up that hole, and then we are going on to the center arm of the jellyfish. I'm going to close that just by weaving in and out of the back, no, that would be the front loops, in and out of the front loops there, and just pulling it not too tight because it does tend to make some gaps in there, and I think that might be the way that I decrease. Okay, so that's closed up, and I'm just checking now for big gaps. There are a couple there, but I'm not going to worry because when we do the center arm, that's actually going to go over that section. So that's done. So I'm just going to secure that end with just a few stitches over and over. This yarn is good because it does snag quite well. And then we're going to bury that end in there. Pull the needle out. Do battle with the needle. There we go. We can chop that off, and the row counting thread, chop that off. There we go, one bell. The next thing that we're going to do then is we are going to grab, or I am going to grab this white that I used for the ruffle, and I'm going to do the center arms. So whatever you've chosen for the center arms, remembering that they are a little bit thicker, a little bit longer than the others. So grab your center arm yarn and we'll get started with that. Now I was going to go down a hook size, but I've decided not to for this particular yarn. So I'm going to stick with my 6mm. Obviously you choose the hook that works with your yarn and your tension. Just going to start with a normal slip knot, and I'm leaving a bit of a tail because these don't have to be sewn in, they can be tied in. So I'm going to leave about that length tail, that's probably a bit long, but about that much at the beginning and the same at the end of this. So first thing we're going to do is 40 chain, and just take care not to twist as you go. There's my 40 chain. Really quite simple. We're just going now into the second from this end, and we are going to single crochet all the way back up to the top. Just be careful not to get a big loop there on that first one. No, I can't see stitches. Okay. You don't need to watch single crochet all the way back to the top, so I will come back when I get there. So that is 40 chain and going back up with 40 single crochet, not 40 because we go in the second, so it's probably 39 single crochet. Then what that will give you is a nice flat piece with a little curl at the end. Now we're not going to cut that, we're going to keep going. Another 40 chain and another 40 single crochet back up, and we're going to do that twice more so that we have 3 connected tentacles. So I'll come back when I've got those 3 done and I'll show you what happens next. And there's our 3 pieces for that center arm. There we go. So the next thing that we need to do is to join those together. So what I'm going to do is let's just get them all untangled. There we go. What I'm going to do is just put my hook into the top of the middle one, pull up a loop, hook into the first one, pull up a loop, and then I'm just going to draw through all of them, and that should connect together quite nicely then, so that you end up with it looking like this. So all 3 of them attached there at the center point. So now I'm going to use that same yarn to sew the end in. So I do have that original beginning one. Let's cut that about there. You don't need a lot because we could always use that one if this one's not long enough. Okay, and again, because I'm a great fan of the knot because we are able to conceal the knot there, and we know that knotted velvet is not going anywhere. All right, so that's secured. That gives us the 3 pieces of the center arms. So now what we want is our body back again. Find your little ending place there, the little hole in the middle, and we're going to place this, doesn't matter if it's right side or wrong side out. I'm going to put that right over the top of that little hole. Make sure it's centered. If you want to use Ami sticks or something else to secure it in place, you can do. I'm not going to worry about that. Now, you could use a crochet hook, and if you use your crochet hook, then it would just be a matter of grabbing that end, going in through the body there, and just pulling that yarn through a few times around the side of the one of the rows. Okay, or you could put your hook aside, grab your needle, and I put a stitch in between the arms, and then I put a stitch from the center just into the top of the arm just to hold it. That's too far. There we go. Just so that it's not dangling only from that center point. Back into the middle and come out between them. Back into the middle, come out into the next arm. Give it a tug so they're nice and tight. Then back into the middle and just make sure that you keep those centered. There we go. Now I'm going to finish that off and then just show you. So if you keep a little bit of tail handy, if you wanted to patch up those blue bits, I don't know if you can see those there, but if you wanted to patch those up, you could. Otherwise, you can see that these are all attached from the center, kind of around the outside of the last row, the last round of the decreases. If you want them a little bit more secured coming out further, then you could just add some extra stitches in there. So I'm just going to finish this off, and then I'll bury the ends and I'll come back again. So we have the bell, we have the ruffle, we have the center arms attached there, and those are quite secure. So the next thing that we need to do, I'm just going to put this aside, and we are going to now add in the extra tentacles, dingle dangles, whatever you'd like to call them. So I like to do another 6. So we've got the 3 center ones. So if we have a look at this guy, if we lay those out, so it sort of makes like a capital Y shape. What I like to do then is to put put 2 arms in between each of the 2 tentacles in between each of those arms. So you can see that there's 2 spaced there, there's 2 spaced there, and then there's 2 spaced there. So I do alternate them around. I use the main body color, so I make 3 in the main body color and then 3 in a contrast color. So they then go body, contrast, all the way around. You could do more, you could do less, completely up to you. I'm actually going to go down a hook size for this yarn because it is a little thinner. So what we're going to do is to start with a slip knot and 30 chain, and I will come back to you when I have got that done. Slip knot, 30 chain. So what we're going to do now is just a little bit different to the other arm. So let me just get that hook back in there. What we're going to start with is 4 single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So, and I'll explain why when I get those done. So there is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's going to just create a little bit more of a rounded end on that, and then we're going to slip stitch all the way back to the top. You could do just a plain strand of chain, but then you've got an end at this point that you've got to worry about how to get that back in. So it's always good to start at the top, go down, and then come back again, because then we can use the start and the end tails to tie this to the body. So I am just going to slip stitch this all the way back to the top, and I do love a good slip stitch because if you fold it, you can just whip it straight through like that. So I will come back when I have finished. That's how they turn out. You can see that they're just a little bit rounder at the end, and then you've got that long strip of single crochet. We have 2 ties at the end, and we'll be attaching those to the body. So I'm just going to keep those until I've finished all of the tentacles that I need. So you'll need 3 of that color if you're doing the same pattern that I am. 3 of those, and then I'm going to do 3 now, and I've already got 2 done. I'm going to do 3 exactly the same, and they are in the main body color. So 30 chain, then come back with 4 single crochet and then slip stitch to the end. So I've got 2 of those. I just need to finish this one more. Now we're on the home stretch. So grab your bell, turn him upside down, and spread those arms out relatively evenly to make like that capital Y or the peace sign, whatever you'd like to call that, over the bell of the jelly. So then we're going to alternate these. So we are going to go with a green, blue, green, blue, green, and blue. And I'm going to put 2 of each of those in between here. Now you can stitch them if you choose, or if you're a bit lazy like me and you don't feel like stitching, then we're just going to use a hook to pull those ends through, tie them in a knot, feed them back through. We are going to work in, not in this one that's directly below the ruffle. We're going to go in one. I'm going to space them evenly, so I'm going to put one right about here. So grab a green one, take the end, wrap it around your hook and pull him through. Okay, sometimes this yarn's a little bit thin, so what I like to do is just to go back into the end of this, pull that yarn through there just to secure it a little more, tie that in a good knot, maybe a few good knots, and alternate your direction each time helps to make a stronger knot. Going to grab that with the hook, so I'm putting the hook in through the body up to the where that has been tied on, coming out there. Grab your ends, grab the knot, and hook that straight through, and that's done. There we go. So that's on nice and tight, not going anywhere. Next colour, so the blue one, just going to eyeball where that goes so they're evenly in that same round again. Just make sure that you're picking up more than one piece of thread through there, just to help make it a bit more secure. Okay, hook that through. And then I'm just going behind here to pull that through this little tentacle again. Oh, this is a bit hard to see. There we go. All right, pull them nice and tight. A knot that way and a knot that way. Hook through the body. There we go. And come out where the yarn comes out. I'm just going to move that over. No, that was right. So the hook's coming out the same hole as the yarn, and we're just going to hook that, pull it through. There we go. Just give it a bit of a dig, make sure it's right in there. Okay, so that's 2 of those tentacles in between 2 of those arms, and we're just going to repeat that all the way around. If you're choosing to add some more, you could just do that, but make sure they're evenly spaced around there. You could even stagger it a bit and have some in that row and then some a little bit closer in. Depends on how many you'd like to have. You could also do some that were just single chain, but then like I said, you have to thread the tail back in again. So I'm going to add those other arms and then I'll come back and we'll be finished. If you would like to make a hanger for your jellyfish, a removable hanger, so it's not a permanent one, what I've got is just 20 chain from this yarn. Slip stitch in the end to make a loop and then cut that off. Sadly for this part you will probably need a needle or a very thin hook. So I'm just going to tie that in a knot to secure it a little bit more. And then, okay, so we've got a little loop there. Now if you want a permanent hanger, just tie that on there. Make sure it's nice and tight. If you want a hanger that can be removed, we've got to secure these ends. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to take one end and I'm just going to weave that in and out of the chains as I go around. Oops, remove the DNA samples. Your customers do not want DNA samples. All right, so I'm just going to, I'll just do this quickly because it's a little bit boring. But anyway, weave that in around, take the other one, weave that one, oops, more DNA. Okay, I don't know why I'm trying to do that right-handed. Weave that one in around in the opposite direction. Just going quickly with this one because I don't actually want a hanger, I just want to show you how to do it. Cut those off right back close to the chain. Okay, now at the top of jelly, there are obviously other ways to do it. This is how I've been doing it and I'm okay with this. So take your loop, go under the first round and just pull your loop through and then just grab him like that. And that will hang. There we go. Don't want to pull it too tight because we don't want to mess with that first round too much. There we go. So just for display purposes, or if somebody, someone buys it, you can say to them, the hanger's removable. It's in there nice and tight. It's not going to damage anything. To get it back out again, you just undo that and pull it back out. Done. So nice and easy hanger. Jelly's all finished. Give it a stretch a few times because these little buggers will pop out. If you've got a better way of doing that, let me know, but this way works for me just for now. So there we go. Jellyfish is done. And there we go. Jellyfish done. So that yarn turned out beautifully stripy with the different greens and the white in between. We've got the velvet ruffle. We've got this matching velvet center arms there with 3 of those with a little curl in the end. And then we've got the mint green and some tentacles made out of this yarn as well. So there we go, a little bit of a curl in the end. So there's lots of variations you can do. You can make that more ruffly, less ruffly. You could put another row around that and give it a really big skirt. You could put 2 single crochet per chain and make that really spirally. You could make them longer, shorter. You could add more. So many different options. You could put the eyes in, little face if you choose. But that's just the basic jellyfish. It is really popular at my markets. It is an eye catcher. So if you're looking at something that's a draw card, you can't miss, you can't go wrong with a cluster of these hanging up along the front of your tent, or somewhere prominent if you're not using a tent and you're just using tables. So jellyfish has no name. I would probably just call it Bob because I call everything Bob. So there we go. Bob jellyfish, all done. Thank you very much for joining me in making this jelly, and if you actually do get him done, please tag me in your post so that I can see how you went and any adaptations that you might have done. Please don't write this pattern up and sell it as your own because it's not. I will have this on in a PDF on Coffee when I get to it. So if you prefer to have a written version, and I will put that up there for just a couple of dollars, just to cover costs and things. So that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback, and I would appreciate you tagging me anytime that you make Bob. Thanks.